The lighthouse on Holden Point had been out of service for years, its glass fogged and its paint flaking like old paper. Fishermen told stories that the light had gone dark the night the storm took 3 boats. Children dared each other to touch the cold brass of the lantern room when tide allowed. For Mara Ellis, who returned to the town after 10 years away, the tower felt less like a relic and more like a promise left unfinished. Mara had left Holden to study engineering in the city, chasing schedules and skyscrapers. Time taught her many things, but it also taught her the ache of distance from the people who had raised her. When her mother fell ill, Mara came home to help, expecting a brief pause. The pause became a route. The town's faces were the same and different, lined with new worries. The fish runs were thinner, the docks needed repair, and the pier lights were unreliable. At a meeting in the community hall, a councilwoman mentioned grant opportunities, and an idea spread through the room like a warm current. What if they brought the lighthouse back to life? It began as a wish, then a plan. The town had the tower and the talent. They needed money, materials, and a reason. Mara volunteered to lead the restoration project, not because she wanted the credit, but because she could read blueprints and calculate loads. Young sailors offered to patch the pier. An electrician named Ben promised to rewire the lantern. The local carpenter, Ms. Alvarez, whose hands could make wood sing, sketched a new walkway and seating for visitors. Even Mayor Hendricks, usually preoccupied with budgets, showed up with coffee and a stack of maps. Restoring the lighthouse meant more than fixing mortar and glass. The lantern's mechanism had to be rebuilt. Old lenses were gone or broken, and the supporting beam was rotted near its base. There were nights when the team worked by flashlight and by each other's stories. Memories of the tower's keeper who had taught a generation how to knot ropes, recollections of weddings under the lantern's glow. Repairs came in fits and starts. A donated lens from a museum, a crowdfunding campaign that exceeded expectations, a volunteer from the city who rewired a stubborn panel while singing a sea shanty. Challenges arrived as predictably as tides. A storm washed away a portion of the newly reinforced seawall. A contractor backed out at the last minute. Supplies were delayed. Tempers flared. Yet with each setback, the town responded differently than it had in the past. Instead of finger-pointing, people offered hands. Teenagers who once had nothing to do learned to lift cinder blocks and mix cement. School children painted signs and collected pennies. Even Mara's mother, between treatments, visited the tower, bringing tea and a steady smile that reminded volunteers why they were there. When the lantern finally lit on a clear autumn evening, the beam swept across the bay like a compass waking. Boats in the harbour slowed, a child clapped, an old fisherman wept and said softly, "There's home." The light did not banish hardship. Storms still came and the fish were still sometimes scarce, but it returned a symbol, a steady presence that the town could build and protect together. The restored lighthouse also became a hub. Workshops were held in its base, knot tying classes, radio communication lessons, even a small gallery of local paintings. Tourists came, yes, but more importantly, neighbors gathered. Mara found herself teaching a night class in basic engineering, translating complex diagrams into language others could use. Ben organized a weekly check of the wiring. Ms. Alvarez carved benches with the names of volunteers, a modest memorial to the months of effort. Weeks later, Mara stood on the walkway as the sun sank and the lighthouse began its slow, reliable sweep. The light lined the faces of people she loved, her mother among them, bathed in a soft glow that seemed to make every worry momentarily smaller. In the tower's hum, she heard something simple and true. Hope is not a sudden blaze, but a careful tending. It grows when people gather, when skills are shared, and when a community decides to lift a small, necessary brightness into the dark. The lighthouse was a light of hope in more ways than one. It guided boats safely, yes, but it also guided a town back to itself. And when winds rose and nights grew long, the beam reminded everyone that even the smallest steady light can redraw a coastline of fear into one of possibility.